Hey guys, I'm Erin Ledbetter, and on this episode of The Spin, we're talking about the risks or the reward of letting influencers go live with content that the brand hasn't approved. And so let's start with the risks. Of course, there's a few. You have the potential that they might make product claims that haven't been cleared for your brand. You have the risk that they might miss key disclosures as a financial brand or as part of a promo that you need to have on your marketing content. Of course, there's the risk that they might misrepresent you. Maybe you're an alcohol brand and you've said do not show overconsumption, but they show more than one beer per person in the shot, and they don't realize that that is a view of overconsumption. You also risk them making mistakes that maybe you as the brand have learned from. So maybe you're a diaper brand and you know that you shouldn't show any content that contradicts the recommendations from the American Pediatrics Association, but your influencers are showing a child in a crib with a blanket. And of course, there's those risks that you have that you've already learned from that they might not know. But there's a lot of reward in letting your influencers go live with content before you've seen it and giving them that creativity that really brought them in the following that they have today and the whole reason you're working with them to begin with. So, you do have the opportunity, if you give them that creative freedom, to really learn from what the influencers, every influencer participating in your program, and the different angles they might take with their particular audience. We have an algorithm here called the Content Performance Index at Carousel, and that lets us learn from the different angles and different creative treatments that our influencers put on content and give that feedback and insight back to the brand to really indicate what might work well for the brand on their own channels. We also know that influencer audiences, women in particular, have said 63% of them have used a new brand or a new product on the recommendation of an influencer that they wouldn't have otherwise had in their consideration set. So it's important that that authenticity comes through, because we also know that 61% of those women said they will not engage with content that doesn't feel authentic. So we really need to make sure these influencers have the opportunity to be creative, to tell their own story, and that creativity isn't stifled by the brand trying to control the message. We also know something that I think brands sometimes forget, because we're so caught up in making sure that we follow the FTC guidelines on disclosures when it comes to influencers. We don't remember that the FTC rules on endorsement also apply. And so you really walk a fine line in trying to make sure that the message gets across while not inhibiting the influencer's ability to tell their own opinion, especially in the cases where they've said all opinions are my own. If you've controlled their opinion, you will run afoul of those FTC endorsement guidelines. So what do? Do you let the influencers kind of go off and do their own thing, or do you control and approve every piece of content? Well, our recommendation at Carousel is to let influencers have the creative freedom. It really brings out that authenticity, but there are ways that you can set yourself up for success up front. The most important thing we do is give them clear guidelines, and influencers have said repeatedly that that's what they want from brands. They don't want a ton of back and forth and edits and approvals, but if you give them clear guidelines up front, they will follow it. So we have our welcome packet. That welcome packet lays out the assignment, the key messages we need them to hit, and also sets the guardrails for what this assignment can and cannot do. And influencers are pretty good at following that. You of course need to have a mechanism in place to monitor their content after it's gone live to make sure it does comply. And you do want to make sure that your contract has stipulations in place that says what happens if the influencer's content does not comply with that welcome packet. But as long as you've set that up front, we found that influencers can have that authenticity and the creativity come through in their content. You'll see the engagement that follows, and brands will have a lot of success. That's it for today's episode of The Spin. See you next time.